So the meeting has been posted for the time and manner required by law. We will begin with the pledges of allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Honor the Texas flag.
I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Please remain standing for the silent invocation. You may be seated. Officer Ontiveros, I apologize for skipping right past you, but if you'd like to make your announcement now, we'd welcome that.
Thank you, ma'am. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. May I ask that everyone silence your cell phones? Before the meeting, we ask that everybody excuse me. Before we begin the meeting, we ask that everyone silence your cell phones. FBISD is a trustee meeting and is an open meeting to the public to observe the board conducting district business. Therefore, audience items members on the address the board during the designated audience items section on the agenda. If you have any printed materials you want to give to the board members, you must provide them to the board secretary, Jane Kaiser, or to me, and we'll provide them to the board. We also ask the members of the audience be respectful of others, remain quiet during the meeting so that everyone's able to hear the proceedings. For your convenience, microphones have been provided on both sides of the boardroom. Please speak directly into the microphone if you're asked to answer a question or address the board during the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Officer Ontiveros. Our next item is staff and student recognitions. Dr. Dupree.
Thank you, Madam President. It is May with just about 3 weeks left in the school year. That means we have a lot of students and staff to recognize this evening. So if the board would join me in front of the dais, we'll get busy shaking hands with students and staff.
Thank you, Dr. Dupree. Tonight, we are proud to recognize 2 Bush High School Navy Junior ROTC students who led the Pledges of Allegiance. They exemplify the school's mantra, class and character. Both competed in the Navy Junior ROTC state drill meet and were recognized as the best unarmed and armed drill commanders in the state. Please help us recognize and congratulate outgoing senior Cadet Commander Gladys Seraphin and Cadet Commander Dylan Williams, who is a junior. Next, we are proud to recognize the Clements High School French students who won a third-place sweepstakes award at the Texas French Symposium, which offers opportunities for French students to compete against their peers from across the state in a broad array of academic and artistic events. Please help us recognize and congratulate Bera Aiken, Michelle Banuet, Santiago Diaz, Athera Vijay Kumar, Prithvi Prakash, Han Wen Zhang, and their teacher, Pam Milton. Next, we have 2 students who are winners in the Abydos Learning statewide writing contest. The Abydos Dana K. Barber Student Writing Contest results in a statewide award where students submit original works of poetry and prose that are judged in a blind scoring process. Sabheed Chanahi from Austin High School won first place poetry with a poem entitled Chemistry. Dulles High School students Leandra Matthew placed third in the same category with her poem Colors. Please help us recognize and congratulate Sabheed Chanahi and his teacher Dan Johnson. And Leandra Matthew and her teacher Almeda Crawford. Next, Joelle Johnson was named the Texas Council of Teachers of English Language Arts Middle School Teacher of the Year for the state of Texas. This is the second year in a row that this award went to a teacher at Bowie Middle School. Please help us recognize and congratulate Joelle Johnson. Almeda Crawford was awarded the Texas Council of Teachers English Language Arts Mercedes Bonner Leadership Award for her teacher leadership and mentorship during her many years in the high school English classroom. The late Mercedes Bonner was a Fort Bend ISD teacher and an ELA coordinator. Please help us recognize and congratulate Almeda Crawford. Next, we have 3 students who hold state championships after competing at the Texas Forensic Association State Meet. Dulles High School junior Nolan Burdette was recognized as the top speaker in the Lincoln Douglas debate. The Clements High School team of seniors Austin Tang and Joshua Yang won first place in the public forum debate. Rebecca Gelfer placed second in Lincoln debate. Please help us recognize and congratulate Nolan Burdette and his coach, Anthony Yim. Austin Tang, Joshua Yang, Rebecca Gelfer, and their coach, Renita Johnson. Next, we have the state math counts teams that won first place and second place at the state math counts competition. Sponsored by the Texas Association of Professional Engineers, students competed in complex, high-level problem solving. Quail Valley Middle School was awarded as the first place team, represented by team members Sri Monan, Ben Wright, and Andrew Liu, who also placed first in the countdown round. Fort Settlement Middle School was awarded second place team and was represented by team members Archer Wang, Eric Wu, Claire Zhao, and Akish Karanam. Eric Liu, Alan Zhang, Archer Wang, and Eric Wu will represent the state of Texas at the National Math Counts competition, which will be televised later in May. Additionally, Alan Zhang won first place in the individual competition and second place in the countdown round. Please help us recognize and congratulate Andrew Liu, Alan Zhang, Sri Mohan, Ben Wright, and their coach, Gwen Curtis. Archer Wang, Eric Wu, Claire Zhao, Akash Karna, and their coach, Sherry Flegley. Next, Quail Valley Middle School GT Academy students won third place in the Junior Division Biochemistry category at the Texas State Engineering Fair. Please help us recognize and congratulate Ardasha Pukulandra, and Alan Wong. And their teacher, Jeanette Morales. Next, Dulles High School students who took third place at the state UIL CX debate. The contest started with 78 of the best teams in Texas. It marks the fifth time in 8 years that Dulles High School placed in the top 3 of the UIL CX debate. Please help us recognize and congratulate Nolan Burdette, Suchan Kundra, and their coach, Anthony Yim. And finally, we recognize Quail Valley Middle School GT Academy students for taking second place at the Texas Math and Science Coaches Association state competition. These students competed in the 6A division in the areas of number sense, calculator, general math, and general science. Please help us recognize and congratulate Andrew Liu, Arnav Garyali, Ben Wright, Krish Single, Kevin Jen, Jefferson Yu, Ardarsha Pukulandra, Shri Mohan, Zishan Wani, Aryan Patel, and Stephen Z. And their coach, Gwen Curtis. Dr. Dupree, this concludes our student and staff recognitions, and I'll turn the recognitions over to you.
Recognition before the board goes back up. Every year at this meeting, right after the election, we take a minute to recognize our president who served as president of the board. So, Mrs. James, we just want to take a minute to give you a small token of your year of outstanding leadership as board president. And thank you so much for all the time you've invested to lead the board and the district this year.
The next item on our agenda is our audience items. Mr. Rice will be timing you tonight, and when you have 30 seconds left, he will give you the warning. And maybe we can close one of the doors.
Any idea how large our police force is by chance?
So we can,
I think
what?
we
I
have,
just trying. I know, bang, bang, bang. They won't hear it out there, though.
yeah, about 30. We had 20.
All right, we're gonna try to.
I think.
Well, I guess. Well, we'll just wait a minute till everyone comes in. All right. Thank you all for being here. Our first speaker tonight is Gary Leist. Did I say it right, sir? That's fine, but make sure the microphone is on before you start speaking. I don't think it's on. Look on the outside of it, or here comes Mr. Pham to your rescue. Ah, the green.
Hello?
There we go. Thank you, sir. You have 3 minutes, and Mr. Rice will tell you when you have 30 seconds remaining.
My name is Gary List. I'm a longtime resident of Lake Olympia, having lived there since 1989. I would like to thank the board for allowing me to address you tonight, and also for your past actions to keep Lake Olympia neighborhood zoned to Elkins High School. I was hoping Ginny Bailey would be here because we wanted to thank Ginny Bailey for her service to Fort Bend ISD and for being a voice for Lake Olympia and the surrounding area. She was a strong proponent for keeping the Lake Olympia neighborhood zoned to Elkins High School. Ginny also backed the proposal of remapping the Lake Olympia neighborhood to Quail Valley Middle School. The Lake Olympia residents will hate to see Ginny go, and we hope her successor will be a voice for our side of Highway 6. We also appreciate the additional board members, Dave Rosenthal and Jason Burdine, who backed the proposed movement of the Lake Olympia neighborhood to Quail Valley Middle School. The main reason I'm here tonight is to ask the board to reconsider and pass the zoning amendment proposed by Ginny, which rezones the Lake Olympia neighborhood to Quail Valley Middle School. This fits aligning feeder patterns, which was a priority of the district during the rezoning process. We do not feel this amendment was giving adequate consideration when first proposed, as it came late in the process when the focus was on the high school rezoning. When Lake Olympia residents met with some board members, they were told by some of these members they didn't have time to fully understand the amendment to rezone the Lake Olympia neighborhood to Quail Valley. I would like to ask Dr. Dupree and the board to not forget about Lake Olympia Middle School and the other failing schools in Fort Bend ISD. The recently published F rating in the Houston Chronicle for Lake Olympia is very depressing and an embarrassment for Fort Bend ISD and for my community. The board decision to map more students into an underperforming Lake Olympia will not help matters. where more focus is needed to improve this middle school. This is not how you fix this problem. I am concerned for my neighborhood where I see increasing numbers of families either moving out of Lake Olympia as the kids approach middle school age or parents placing their kids in private school. I am leaving you with a petition that was mailed to you last week. It is signed by over 100 Lake Olympia residents asking you to reconsider and pass the amendment to rezone the Lake
30
Olympia,
seconds.
thanks, the Lake Olympia neighborhood to the underutilized Quail Valley Middle School. We would appreciate if the board takes this action. Thank you.
Sorry. Thank you, Mr. Lice. Our next speaker is Carol Scott.
I have been working with others who oppose the hardtop cover at Colony Meadows. The process for this project has not been followed, and when I mentioned this to both the PTO president and the principal that the bylaws were being violated in regards to this project, I was just told that bylaws had not been followed in the past. Members of both Colony Meadows Elementary School and neighbors have been concerned about the lack of community collaboration, transparency, and trust. I'm here today because I truly believe in we the people. I believe that our government works for the people. I believe that you, our elected officials, make decisions for our government. I was disturbed when I received an email from staff saying Fort Bend ISD was working with the City of Sugar Land and the HOA regarding the covering. And when a few days later an email went home by school messenger stating the hardtop cover was coming soon, summer 2015. Then I received a call from staff telling me the project was moving forward because PTO had the money in the bank. All of this occurred before the PTO had discussion on fully funding the project and before a vote was taken. When this email was sent home, it gave the impression that any opposition was pointless. The PTO met last week to vote on fully funding this project. A new board had been elected. However, the old board was allowed to vote on the funding of the hardtop project. How could the old board vote when the new board, according to the CME bylaws, was now in power? An inquiry was tried by a member of the who opposed the project. She was met with the words of, "Laura, did you think of this by yourself or did you have help?" When she tried to ask a point of parliamentary inquiry, the parliamentarian began to talk over her. The parliamentarian stated with, and let me just paraphrase this, "What the heck?" asked Mrs. Campbell why she was doing this when the project was for the children. Ms. Campbell also tried another motion, and again she was talked over. A vote by ballot was called, and the tally was not given, just stated it had passed. I really wanted to defend Ms. Campbell, but I wondered if the police officer drinking from the water fountain would escort me out of the room. It had a very chilling effect. I overheard a PTO board member say the investigation into this project would finish in June, the trustees would vote in July, and the hardtop cover would be built in late July, early August. Materials had been set aside. I believe this flyer's wrong. It was wrong to be sent out before the PTO discussed it and voted on it, and it's still wrong because you have not yet voted on it, and yet it continues to go home in Tuesday folders. We have a government of checks and balances. If this cover is a good idea, let it be done in a fair and balanced way. Send this project back to the PTO. Let them extend a welcoming hand to all who are interested, and if it moves forward with a spirit of collaboration, then so be it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Scott. Our next speaker is Fred Smith.
Good evening.
Make sure that microphone is on.
Yes.
Is the green light on?
Why?
It is. That's,
Good evening.
thank you, sir.
My name is Fred Smith, and I'm Director of Business Development for First Student Transportation. Our company submitted a proposal for your transportation services last month. And our company was the low bidder, and I know that low bid is not the determining factor in bids. But we were a little disappointed that because the ratings on the sheet were so very close, that we were never contacted or looked at to get any additional information. And I would draw your attention to two items on your appraisal sheet, which is in your agenda packet. One item, the first item on that being the purchase price. Our company was rated the highest because we had the lowest cost. There are several other items that may or may not be a bit subjective. But the sixth item on there, it says long-term cost to the district. And the other company was rated higher. And I find it difficult to see how that you could rate the price with us being the best and the long-term cost to the district with the other company being the best, and there was only 1 year's worth of cost provided. So it would seem logical that we would have been rated higher in that respect. With a grading system out of 100 points being separated only by less than 3 points, if that one item were corrected, it seems that that would tip the rating process into our favor. What I would respectfully ask you to do is maybe remove this item from the consent agenda, relook at that process, and if the actual rating goes forward, consider negotiating with our company, or at a very minimum, you could consider a split award and award half the routes to the other company and half to our company. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Our next speaker is Laura Gast. Officer Gast.
Good evening, Dr. Dupree, board members. My name is Laura Gast, and I'm an SRO at Bowie Middle School. I've worked for the Fort Bend ISD Police Department for over 15 years. You may notice that there's several officers here tonight, more than you're used to seeing. We're here to show you how much we appreciate your support of us as individuals and as of our growing department. We know you have an opportunity tonight to take action on a compensation package that would bring Fort Bend ISD Police Department to the forefront in law enforcement in our community. Not only will this benefit our officers who have dedicated their careers to making a difference in the lives of our students, this package will help us recruit and retain higher caliber officers. For that, we want to express a heartfelt thank you to all of you, Dr. Dupree and the Board of Trustees, for recognizing our police department in a very meaningful way. When children leave their home in the morning to go to school, they should believe in their heart that they'll be safe and secure all day. They should not have to worry about being safe at school. Parents should be assured that the children they trust to our care will arrive safely at home every evening. They should also know that their children learn the skills that they will need to succeed in the future. We want you to know that we work very hard every day to ensure the safety of our students, staff, parents, and provide a safe, secure learning environment for a Fort Bend ISD. Our department also tries very hard to provide added value to our service. We want to make every child and have an early impact on those children, teaching them that police officers are adults they can trust, look up to, and ask for help. Fort Bend ISD police undergo at least 80 hours of relevant training every summer, which quadruples the minimum requirements by TCOL, who is our state licensing agency. No other police department in our area provides more training to their officers than Fort Bend ISD. This training helps us to become a resource to our students, staff, and our parents. Recent tragedies in the news lately have caused the image of many in law enforcement profession to be tarnished in the eyes of our community. In our department, we have dedicated our lives to help change that image by helping our students, parents, teachers, and administrators anytime we get the chance. Yes, we are tasked with applying the law in criminal matters.
30 seconds.
But in every case, we consider what's best in every party, in every situation. We consider ourselves educators first. As such, we're a part of this team that looks to inspire, equip students to pursue futures beyond what they can imagine. Again, on behalf of my police department, I'd like to thank you for your continued support, your investment in our department, and your recognition to our commitment to be the best that we can be. Thank you.
Thank you, Officer Gass. Our next speaker is Rodrigo Carrion.
Good evening. My name is Rodrigo Carrion. I come to speak relating item 11B1. If the Fort Bend ISD School District agrees with our county officials that Fort Bend Central Appraisal is a private entity, there's no reason that our school teachers and principals should be assigned and to be working for this appraisal system, because the commissioners and county has stated in the Fort Bend Star on December 31st that county officials have no authority, nothing to do with the central appraisal. But what? It just came out this week, the Fort Bend Star stating that it's what costing taxpayers $72,000 additional dollars for what? Fort Bend appraisal errors of unlawful valuations, values being provided to the public. And that's totally unnecessary and illegal. So it's not good to get our teachers involved in some illegal actions that's affecting the public taxpayers and residents. And also comes to speak relating item I-10 and 11, vending machines. I think I oppose this item, vending machines and snacks. Why is that? Because that's going to lead our students to buying unhealthy foods and drinks. I already have a family member stating, oh, she don't want to drink water. Why? Well, they're serving them too much unhealthy drinks. And that's the reason. And by putting vending machines and snacks and cokes and drinks, well, that's going to lead our students to buy and leave water behind and live an unhealthy life. So it's better to leave these vending machines out and snacks. And if they want to bring their own snacks, we'll let them bring their own lunch and snack. If they don't like our food that we're serving, hot meals at our schools, which should be more healthier and safer. So I'm opposed against the vending machines and snacks. That way our students will get the message. Are they willing to carry their own lunch, or are they willing to buy and eat healthy lunch from our own schools? Which I have faith that we're serving something nutritional and good for them to eat. Okay? So this is my point of view. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Carrion. Our last speaker this evening is Carrie Waschenfelder.
Good evening. My name is Carrie Waschenfelder. I'm president of Fort Bend Employee Federation, soon to be a newly named organization, Fort Bend AFT, to really spotlight our affiliation with the American Federation of Teachers. Today I'm coming to speak not about the bullying that you see talked about through social media and on the TV between children at the bus stop. We're here to talk about something that affects all of our members, either because they're witnessing it or because they're affected by workplace bullying. And last month, all of the local AFT unions in the greater Houston area met to discuss this at a press conference in HISD. And these were the remarks I delivered, and I wanted to speak personally to everyone here. I haven't gotten around to everyone, but that is my intent. And I hope this summer, when we have time, we can sit back and really look at this and come up with a policy that we can put in place in Fort Bend ISD. When employees are bullied by their administrators, when they are badgered and taunted by workmates on the job site, or when the administration uses public reprimands to intimidate employees, the school climate, the school morale takes a nosedive. Even employees who are not being bullied wonder if they're next to be bullied. That's when we start to see faculty turnover. The cost in faculty turnover can be even more than disheartening. It can mean a huge monetary cost to the district. Absences go up, the cost of substitutes go up, health costs multiply, and it can mean thousands of dollars lost in training cost. When that's multiplied over a large district like ours, the cost of a bullying environment can translate to mega thousands in turnover cost. We can't turn our back on the problem. We must have a workplace bullying policy much like that of HISD. This can be a policy that stands up for our employees, and it won't cost a dime, but it will put bullies in their place. So I will be dispensing material, and I hope we can sit down and have a quiet conversation about something that can create a great disturbance in our environment in our schools. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Waschenfelder. That concludes our audience items for this evening. Our next item on our agenda is information. Dr. Dupree?
Yes, Mrs. James, we have one item this evening. It is a strategic planning update on the program evaluation we're currently doing on our special education program. Dr. Hill and Dr. Garcia are going to present this evening. Before they get started, though, I thought it was important to I just want to make a remark to the board. You know, we're really working hard to provide you governance level reports that are appropriate for the boardroom. And so sometimes we get a little bit long, and we want to keep them at the proper length, but we always want to provide the proper amount of information as well. So what we're trying to do is to provide you kind of some pre-reading materials, which you all are doing a great job of reading in preparation. So this will be a good example of what we're trying to achieve. So tonight's report should be about 15 to 20 minutes, and then of course we're always open to all the questions you might have for us. But we're also open and agreeable to sitting down after the meeting if you have more extensive questions or if you'd like to send us emails to engage with you more about any of these topics. So just want to kind of set the stage for tonight's report because it is going to be a little briefer than some we've had recently. So I'll turn it over to Dr. Hill to get going.
Good evening. It's my pleasure to be here this evening. My charge is to walk you through our developmental review. A developmental review differs from a program evaluation in that in a program evaluation you evaluate the program and then you decide what to do. In a developmental program review, you look at and research best practices and improvements along the way. And we did this during our developmental review, and then we went into strategic planning. Dr. Garcia will join me at the podium later, and she'll go into the strategic planning process. For our developmental review, we looked at what the current state of education is as far as our special needs students. We collected qualitative and quantitative data looking at student performance and varied sources of information. We had two groups, a task force group and a core team group that worked with us, in addition to some community dialogues and some surveys. We determined areas for improvement, and then in our strategic planning process, we determined goals that would move us forward in improving how we serve our special needs students. In our qualitative data, we looked at Texas Education Agency data first. We call it PBMAS, our Performance-Based Monitoring Assessment System. That is the accountability from TEA for special programs, ELL students, special education, and so forth. And we looked at the data there. They had several priority areas that we needed to look at. We also looked at our PEMS data. That's the data source that we inform the state regarding our student enrollment, programs that students are in, how we spend our money, attendance, and so forth. Then we looked at local quantitative data from Skyward. That's our own enrollment records and our own record keeping. Then we moved to qualitative data. We had a parent advisory group that met. It was an educational focus in the beginning, and then we shared data with them to get their feedback. We developed a questionnaire at a meeting to get their feedback. They wanted to distribute that to all the special education parents, and so we did that through a hard copy. Then we held 2 community dialogue meetings, and we gave a hard copy survey at the community dialogue meetings, and based upon input from the participants at those community dialogue meetings, we revised our survey prior to sending it out digitally so that parents could give us some more identifiable information, such as what programs their children were in. And then we got the results from that digital survey that was delivered through parent email. We also took staff feedback from the task force. Task force had job-alike groups that gathered input from their interest groups, in addition to community members. Our core team was made up primarily of district and campus leaders to help us lead our change, to help us lead our improvement as we develop it. And then we've had various focus groups. We've had elementary principal focus group, middle school principal focus group, and high school principal focus group. Once the school year begins, next year we'll begin to have some of the teacher focus groups because we want to get as much information as we can. Through all of this qualitative and quantitative data, we noted that there were 9 areas for improvement. The first area is solving our over-identification of African American students. When you look at Fort Bend ISD's percentage of African American students being served in special education, we far exceed both the state and the nation. And we don't believe that that is accurate. We believe that we need to look at how we're assessing students and how those students are being referred into special education, since our district seems to be unique there. We also have some issues with least restrictive environment, and Texas Education Agency has pointed those out in the PBMAS report. Your least restrictive environment is sometimes called LRE, and it's law-bound. We are supposed to serve students in the least restrictive environment. If they can be in the mainstream classroom and have their needs met, they should be there as much as possible. If they're in a self-contained classroom, but they could have some needs met in a resource room, then that would be a less restrictive environment than the self-contained classroom. In looking at our data, we have too many students who are being served in resource rooms and possibly even self-contained classrooms. We need improved systems for compliance and staff accountability. We had a Texas Education Agency audit of our special education program in 2013. We completed a corrective action plan. The state accepted that and approved it and gave us a passing grade, so to speak. But as we've gone through our data analysis and our developmental program review, we have determined that we need better systems to sustain that improvement and that accountability. The fourth point was clearer roles and responsibilities for special education staff. We noted as we had these focus groups and the task force that there were inconsistencies in looking at how both district and campus special education staff supported and served students and how they viewed their roles and responsibilities. And we need more clarity in identifying those roles and duties and better accountability and support for our staff so that they know very clearly what they're supposed to be doing. Quality and ongoing training with general education and special education staff. Many times we have spoken to you about how we have quit working in silos, Department of School Leadership, curriculum and instruction, special education, and federal and special programs. However, when teachers go for professional development, we still have some siloed effect. Special education teachers are likely to attend special education professional development, not always getting the very cutting edge and latest in curriculum and instruction and in pedagogy. Then on the flip side of that, our regular education teachers are not always getting how to modify lessons, how to differentiate instruction. And we need to make those silos go away so that special education students or teachers are better trained in pedagogy and curriculum, and our regular education teachers are better prepared for a more inclusive student body. We have some assessment concerns. When we look at some areas in which Fort Bend is dramatically out of alignment in identifying students with disabilities, we identify a lot more students in the areas of autism, other health impaired, and intellectual disability. Those areas are areas where the assessment is more open to interpretation and perhaps even bias on the parts of our assessors, or may rely on the evaluation tools that we use. When we look at assessments where things are clear-cut, hearing impaired, vision, orthopedically handicapped, when we look at those areas where it's clear-cut, the disability is clear-cut, we are in alignment with the state and the nation. So we know that we need to look at our assessment practices. Streamlining paperwork. As we met with the task force and we began to peel the onion, so to speak, there was a loud cry that we have some redundancy in our paperwork. While we want to be compliant, we want our staff to spend their time, to maximize their time supporting students while we do comply with federal and state paperwork. So we want to look at that. Increase communication with parents regarding programs and services and placement. This is an area where we know that we need to improve because, for example, 79% of the respondents to our electronic survey said that they felt that their children were full partners in education at their campuses. But in that very same survey, 40% of them could not name the programs or services their children were getting. And across the board, there was a trend toward wanting more communication. In these surveys, just some numbers for you, 173 parents responded to the paper questionnaire. We received a receipt from K-12 Insight that on our digital surveys, 5,413 individuals received their surveys. Only 225 parents participated, which is 5%. And there are two ways of looking at that when we think about communication. When we have community dialogue meetings or surveys, it's very likely that people who have more concerns are more likely to participate and be active. We could interpret those results that way. But we could also say parents are telling us they want more communication. They're also telling us they want more training and more support in dealing with their special needs children. If that's the case, perhaps the second interpretation is we need to form closer partnerships and better relationships and communication with our parents of special needs children. These are the 9 areas for improvement, and this is how we identified them. As we think about these areas, the trends in these surveys were that parents want additional training, increased communication, they want additional special education staff so they're sure that their students' needs are being met. They want specific training so that they know how to support their child both from an academic standpoint and to support the specific disability needs of their children. These parents face challenges and they are looking to the school district for support. Now we'll go into our strategic plan, and Dr. Garcia will tell you how we will support them through a strategic plan for improvement. Oops.
Thank you, Dr. Hill. It is to my pleasure to follow Dr. Hill and tell you a little bit about how the strategic planning worked. The developmental review and the strategic planning was relied on the participation and the input of 2 groups, the task force group and the core team. And as Dr. Hill has said, the task force, the task force was made up of community members, campus principals, teachers, special services providers in special education, which included diagnosticians, speech pathologists. We even had the the campus compliance coordinators. We had representation there. So we had very good representation in the task force. The core team was a much smaller group, but it was district and campus level leadership, which included an assistant superintendent, Dr. Hill, myself, the 3 assistant directors in special education, and principal participation. And the membership of both of those groups are Exhibit A and B in the program that you got. As this slide says, this task force began by looking at all the data, which is also in your manual that you received the program, which includes a statewide data, our own data, comparisons with other districts that match ours. It also included the team going out to job-alike colleagues and getting information from them as to the current services, what is working well and what is not working well. A critical component was that they developed also standards for what they considered quality services from special education. The task force work, if you look at this graphic right here, it illustrates a framework that we used in order to do our work for the strategic redesign. We begin by, like we said, a current profile. What is the state of the special education program in Fort Bend ISD? We did an analysis of challenges and opportunities. These were brought by each team member, and everyone had a voice. Quality standards for special education services, which I'll share with you. They developed them and came to consensus, as well as where are we now, and we did a discrepancy model to see where the gaps were. Okay. As I said, they came up with 8 quality standards, which we're very proud of, that were developed. The first one was that we needed to have a full array of options equitably distributed for all our special education students, quality instruction and classroom management, a shared ownership, a philosophy and acceptance of the responsibility for these students, highly valued parent relationships, full state and federal compliance, fiscally responsible, efficient, and effective management of all personnel and resources. We also all agreed that both special education and regular education staff, especially teachers, as Dr. Hill mentioned, needed to work collaboratively and together in training side by side and learning from each other to how best meet the needs of the students. And the last one was successful inclusion of students in the least restrictive environment. The core team's work, like I said, it was a smaller group, but we began a little more methodically by establishing, we were going to bring all the work from the task force to the core team, and we began by establishing some core team norms or tenets. We all came up with what it was that we were going to, the decisions would be based on, and everything that we decided on had to follow these tenets. The first one was focus exclusively on students and leave adult issues out of the way. Create high-impact systemic change, design for permanence and sustainability, and maintain a sense of urgency. Those were the 4 tenets that we operated from. We also came up with, after doing some research, we came up with what we considered 4 characteristics of all students with disabilities, and they were high expectations, cutting-edge services, inclusive practices, and committed leaders, faculty, and parents. As the slide shows, we reviewed all data, then we had the team go to Clark County to visit their special education department there. You might ask why Clark County. Clark County is known nationwide for its systems approach to services. It's like a little clockwork. It just works really well. And it's amazing because they have 325,000 students, which is one of the largest districts in the state, and 36,000 special education students. What we were most interested in was seeing how they operated in systems, because that's an area where we found to be in dire need of, have the right systems to provide the right services like clockwork. So that's why we went there. So we conducted that visit there as well. Okay. Another part of the, besides the tenets and what we all agreed on, was that the core team came up with a special education philosophy, and it's based on 4 foundations: capacity building, consistent guidance, clear communications, and sustainability. And our philosophy is one of shared ownership, responsibility, and accountability for all of these students. What we're most proud of, because we did say we started out with the developmental design as well, but it's the most important one was setting the foundation for the strategic plan. And before we could move forward, we all had to agree on what is going to be the foundation. So we all agreed and came to consensus on 8 major goals that this plan needs to be based on. And I'm not going to read them all to you, but for example, at the very top, we talk about a multi-tiered system of services for students. Is that my time? And it is a, Dr. Dupree, are you timing me? District-wide. System of multi-tiered academic and behavior supports, full array of quality services, instructional quality that narrows the achievement gap, and so on and so forth. So what did we do then? Well, it took us quite a while to come up with these goals that we were all going to agree on. So we came up with 9. So what was the next step? Well, the next step was, okay, so we have the goals. What's the next step? The next step was to take each goal, and you'll see goal number 1 right here, a district-wide system of multi-tiered academic and behavior supports. What does that look like? I mean, what does that really look like, and what are we going to need to have in place so that we can build our action plan from that, as well as of our measurable outcomes? And so we came up with 7 pathways. In this case, there's 7. All 9 goals are in the back. It's the last section of your book, and all 9 goals have these pathways to success. Not only have 7, we came up with as many as we thought were necessary for us to be able to build a strategic plan. In this one, for example, there's 7. The first one being standardized and structured systems, develop procedures aligned to legal framework, multiple research-based interventions, clearly defined expectations for teaching, an RTI model, response to intervention, and flexibility for students to be able to access this RTI model, and responsive access for students with low incidence disabilities, because we do have a lot of students with low incidence disabilities that may be falling through the cracks. So each one of these was then further developed, and like I said, it's in your plan. Okay, so we've completed a lot of work. Much work has been finished, from the 9 areas of improvement that Dr. Hill shared with you, to 8 quality standards, to 4 quality characteristics, to the 9 goals, the rationale for those goals, and the pathway. So that's the work that has been completed, but there's still a lot of work that remains. And we will continue to refine and add details as the strategic plan is formulated with action steps and measurable outcomes. As we continue on this plan, we do have some priority areas that we must address immediately and with some urgency, and they are priority areas, as Dr. Hill described, that are governed or monitored by TEA rules and guidelines, which are, as she said, the least restrictive environment, over identification of African American students, too many removals of students out of the classroom that are special education, and equally important is the underachievement of our special education students in the areas of science, social studies, writing, and EOC in math. So we will continue to work toward improving these areas with deliberate action, and at the same time that we're building this plan. I guess, you know, if some of you read the book, we're fixing the plane as we're flying it, or working on the plane as we fly it, and that's basically what we're doing. In closing, systems improvement and sustainability requires organizational transformation, which in turn requires timing, selling, staging, and a well-thought-out execution plan. And for this reason, the strategic plan is very critical to our work. But under the leadership of our new executive director, we will all work together with him or her to redesign all our services and the implementation of our plan in the 2016-17 school year. You do have a timeline on pages 30 and 31. It is a timeline that is a work in progress, and we continue to change it as we move along and achieve certain goals, but it delineates some of the work we've done and how we're moving forward. And that concludes my presentation.
Well, thank you, Dr. Garcia. That was fantastic. 21 minutes.
21 minutes?
Yeah.
Awesome. I guess
Awesome.
that would be like a C, right?
I'm going to refrain from commenting. I'm very pleased with 21 minutes, so I'm
Thank
just going to
you.
go with that. Do we have any questions from the trustees? Mr. Burdine?
I was going to say I enjoyed the content. It's not really so much about the time, but the level of content, and I thought that was great. So thanks for your presentation.
Thank you.
Yes, Mr. Rice? Mr. Rosenthal?
In reading the report over the weekend, one of the, I think the key things that I'm glad you identified was some of the lack of consistency. I mean, that really seems to explain it quite well, some of the differences in the identifications. And what do you think it's really going to take to get that to where consistent assessments can be applied throughout the district?
Well, we certainly have gathered a lot of information from all the stakeholders and the people who participated in these groups. We've also heard from other districts that we've not visited, we've talked to about how they have quality control over this. And some of the things they do is they have a team that assesses all initial referrals and all students who transfer from other districts, so that all of that is done by just one team, and they meet once a week and review those to make sure that everybody's in consensus and agreement and signs off on the new ones. And of course, you have the re-evals, and that doesn't happen with that team, but all the initial entries and transfers. So there's a lot of ideas that we're looking at in terms of what we can do to improve on that.
So how was it exactly in the past then that this happened?
With the situation for over-identification of African American students, for example, that's a trend that has been taking place for 10 years.
Right, I
It's
saw
a
that.
decade-long trend. And one of the things that is a system that we don't have is we need to be able to quickly identify who the students are, when they were identified, whether they were identified here, as Dr. Garcia was saying, so that we can begin to see trends. For example, does this stem from school readiness and perhaps students who are in economically disadvantaged homes, and when they come to school, they just don't have the same enrichment or background that perhaps some students in more affluent homes have? Are there trends where we have certain feeder patterns or schools that are identifying more students? And those are some of we need a data bank where we can get that kind of information quickly. And this summer, we're going to work on that with our current special education software system.
I guess what I expected was maybe, like in the autism spectrum, where we're almost double the state average. Do you think, did you have different people constantly identifying some of these kids or assessing these kids, and now you're talking about having it more as a team approach to try to make it more consistent?
Sometimes kids come to us who are determined to have autism by medical personnel. Sometimes it's by our team, and we need to divide that up. Another thing that sometimes happens that we need to look into is sometimes people would transfer into a district with a certain disability because the word spreads that there is support for that disability. And there is also some feeling that that could be occurring here.
Okay, and also, if I do my quick math here, we have 45 diagnosticians and 39 LSSPs, school psychologists. That adds up to 84 people doing assessments.
Right, that's kind of what I expected, yeah. Okay.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
Rosenthal. Mrs. Tossam.
Thank you. Thank you both for that presentation and for giving us the material to read in advance. It was very, very helpful. So as you might imagine, I have just a couple of questions. First of all, going back to the beginning and looking at the Parent Advisory Council, and I know you guys have presented that to us before. Could you briefly describe what their role is or will be in the future, and how we plan to use them going forward?
Yes, this was our first attempt at doing that, and what we did was we wanted a representative from every campus, and we felt that time was of the essence. We needed to get things moving quickly. It was in January, so we asked each principal to please identify a special education, parent of a special education child that would like to serve on this committee, and send us a name and email and information, which they did, so we were able to gather one from every single campus. And the purpose of why we were meeting, and we gave them all that information. Well, you kind of learn when you do things the first time, so we kind of learned from that. And usually when a principal asks someone, do you want to serve on this? Well, the parents aren't going to really say no, and so they agreed. But I think we had a lot of absences at those meetings. It was not well attended. So one of the things we discussed with them was other options to perhaps open it up to volunteers, someone who would be willing to make the commitment to come to our meetings this coming year. So we're going to structure it differently, and also that they have to assign an alternate so that when one person cannot come, they contact their alternate to come and they share the notes. And whenever there's campus meetings, PTA or whatever, that they need to be agendized so that they can come back and report what they've heard.
Good.
So it'll be structured differently for next year.
Okay, thank you. Glad to hear that. And so how are we going to utilize this committee, like within the strategic plan going forward?
As we are developing the action plan and the measurable outcomes, and things continue to surface and research that we get, we will bring that forth to them and share it with them and get their impressions, their perspective, and take back to the comprehensive team that will be working on the strategic plan with the executive director and some of us.
Okay, good. One of the questions I had with regard to implementing the strategic plan going forward and meeting some of these goals How do you guys plan to ensure consistency at all Fort Bend ISD campuses in achieving and implementing the plan and achieving the goals?
Well, we've been analyzing our staff already and looking at their job roles. And one of the things that we learned in going to Clark County was the way the system worked in terms of communication and the meetings that they held and the information they brought forth and what was working and what wasn't. So we are going to have to look at how our system is not working that way, and the responsibilities of some of our coordinators and our facilitators will have to look differently for us, because we're going to have those meetings and have accountability and have consistency and quality control over the services.
Okay, good. And I understand that the Clark County visit went really well and that you guys...
Very well.
Yeah. Did we get responses to the questions that we submitted to them? I saw the questions.
Yes, we
Okay.
did. And
Is
they
that in our
actually
book?
gave
Did I
us a
miss that?
lot of information. They gave us booklets full. I mean, there's still stuff
Oh.
we're going through, manuals and questions. And we came back with, the good thing about visiting a place like that is that you go in there with a set mind of what you're going to ask and how do you do this, and you come out finding out a lot more things that you hadn't even thought that you might have to know about. So it was a very, very worthwhile trip, and we are still reviewing all the things they gave us, and a lot of the forms they sent to us electronically and job descriptions. We wanted to know that as well. And so we're still pouring through all of that.
Okay, good. That's good to know. One other question I had is one of the things that I didn't see addressed, and I know we've been addressing some of this separately, but I wanted to ask you guys how it ties into the special education strategic plan, is behavior and implementation of PBIS. Do we look at that in the context of special education, how we plan to make sure, I guess how we plan to structure that within the strategic plan and how we plan to implement that going forward in special education?
Right. Our positive behavior support systems are identified by our CHAMPS program and our Foundations program, and we will be adding to that restorative discipline as well. And I believe the last time that I came forth, the question came up about how was CHAMPS working at the campuses. So what we had the campuses do was we send them a 3-page rubric, which I know was extensive, but it addressed a lot of areas of how they were implementing CHAMPS. Then we sent the behavior specialist to go over there and do a walkthrough and do the rubric as well. We're comparing that data, and what we're finding is that whereas the campuses and the principals do believe in it, it's not always being implemented with fidelity. And in the campuses where it is, we see less discipline, less referrals to the office. So what we need to do now is we know what programs we want, and the training will continue. Michael Ewing is here with us tonight. He has a vested interest in making sure that happens as well. And as a matter of fact, we're doing training in June again. And what was really refreshing to me was to hear a middle school principal say, "When's the next training? I've got new staff that has to be trained." That's what you always want to hear. So,
Right.
not
Well,
like, when is the next training, you know? So,
Well, that's good to hear, because that was going to be my next question. And will that training be made available to all teachers and not just special education teachers and
oh, it's always been it's got to be campus-wide.
campus-wide? Okay, good. And my last question, you guys talked about priority areas, and one of those that you identify were the underachievement in some of our core curriculum areas, and that needs to be addressed. How do you envision that being addressed going forward?
I'll let the curriculum specialist speak to that.
One of the things that we need to do this summer is to look at the placement of our students, and to students are placed through an ARD, and so we can't just arbitrarily start shuffling the deck and moving them around. But we do believe that there are some students who could be exposed to the regular curriculum pretty early if we could identify those students and then make sure that as we move them out, they do have support. We also believe that where they are in inclusive settings, our teachers are not fully equipped to deal with the different learning styles and needs. And just today, we began a trainer of trainers training with teachers for differentiated instruction. And each campus is sending 2 teachers so that we can sustain that training and have embedded professional development at our campuses once they're trained, and continue to add some some training throughout the school year, and every campus in the district is sending 2 teachers for that training.
That's good. Well, yeah, I think it's a difficult situation because as long as we have standardized tests and we're giving kids with individualized plans standardized tests, it puts not only the kids but the district in a pretty difficult situation. So I was really curious how you guys were going to address that. I know in my own experience, Abby's had some really good teachers and has been exposed to the general education curriculum, which has made her very successful in her classroom. But regardless, on standardized tests, we continue to just struggle because it's not something that is tailored to her. So I'm curious how we as a district could address that. I know we still have to be accountable for state standardized tests, but how can we help our kids be more successful by maybe tailoring our assessments for them, even though it may not be, our district assessments are aligned with STAR, I know that, but how can we tailor our assessments to be more individualized for those kids that have those plans? So that's a
Well, the modifications that the student gets should be carried over into common assessments also. And
they're not.
We need to work on that, the accommodations, pardon me.
Yeah, not modifications.
The other thing, Ms. Tasson, that we believe may contribute to the lower performance is if you look at that identification rate, we are below the state and the nation in identifying learning disabled students. And so it would seem that a lot of our special education students who are being measured on achievement are students who have the most severe learning disabilities. And the students who have the milder learning disabilities might not be receiving the services they need, and they're not included in our special education group, which makes our performance perhaps a little bit lower by not having them there. You wouldn't want to identify them just for the sake of that, but you certainly, when you look at that identification rate, it would appear that we're missing some kids.
Yeah, I would agree. I think that's a good observation.
And I'm sure you know about Senate Bill 149.
I do.
And so it's, I think the state is going to be looking at things differently because there are a lot of students who do their work. They're maybe overachievers, are very diligent, and they have tenacity, but when it comes to testing, they don't do well.
That's right.
So this is why we're looking at, there's like 14 or 15 items, including portfolios in a project and things like that, that we can also consider in a graduation committee.
Yeah, I think that's great, and I would love to see us as a district be able to tailor something for these students, even though, because my daughter does fall into that more intellectually disabled, and passing STAR is not something that's really going to happen as long as we don't have a modified STAR, and a lot of our kids are in that same boat, but we need them to be successful and feel successful as they're achieving their IEP goals. So thank you guys very much. I appreciate it.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Mr. George, do you have questions? Yes, well, thank you. Thank you, Dr. Garcia and Dr. Hill. That was a very nice presentation. I think we have a great understanding of what's going on with the evaluation of special ed, and we're looking forward to hearing more about your plans in the future. So thank you for this update. We appreciate it very much. Our next item is to convene in closed session. So we will convene in closed session for the purpose of a private consultation with the board's attorney and for personnel matters. The board's now convened in closed session.